Now, on the line, we have a dear friend of mine and a colleague, mentor. That is Frank Gaffney, who is the president for the Center for Security Policy. Frank, how are you doing?
Colonel, I'm the better for being able to talk to you. Thank
Oh,
you
my
very much for
God.
having me.
You're a gentleman and a scholar. Look, let's talk about this incredible piece that you wrote Tuesday, September the 3rd. It was in the Washington Times, and you talked about Obama's Goldilocks strike on Syria. Why do you call it a fairy tale strike?
Well, at the time, we were told that it was going to be not too much, not too little, but just right, which reminded me a lot of that porridge business, remember?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you've just described as I was coming on that this is beginning already, even before the war gets started, to involve mission creep. So it's likely to be a lot more of the more than the less and the just right. So, and that's only a foretaste of what's to come, I think, if we wind up getting into it. But as you and I have now been talking about for some time, Alan, there are so many reasons why we should be very, very careful about going down this road, and we're being anything but careful. I mean, the president, yes, has brought in some of your former colleagues to vote on the action, but on the basis of what? On the basis in the Senate of nothing but the administration's testimony? On the basis of what is, I think, increasingly controversial evidence of the Assad regime being responsible for the gassing in the first place? On the basis of getting into now changing the momentum on the battlefield, which, as you know, is part of this resolution. I mean, for all these reasons, I think caution is the order of the day, and it seems not to be being applied.
Well, everyone will come back and say, Frank, that if we don't do anything, it ruins our credibility. If we don't do anything, we're emboldening Assad, we're emboldening Iran, we're emboldening all of the Islamic terrorists. You know, well, then how do you counter that argument? Because, you know, I believe if you take an action and you take the wrong action, it's going to be even worse.
Yeah, look, the calculations like this, I mean, you've been at the pointy end of the spear, and you know that at the end of the day, what ultimately affects the calculations of people like Bashar Assad, or for that matter, the guys in Al-Qaeda who are on the other side, and would be the, I guess, likely successors to Assad, or at least the Muslim Brotherhood, their allies. What operates for them is, are you willing to destroy them decisively?
Yeah.
And if you are, then you're going to start getting inside their head. If you're not, I think we're kidding ourselves that these signal sendings, these shots across the bow and so on are going to have any appreciable effect other than get us into this civil war, which I don't see any upside.
You know, you just hit the nail on the head. You know, when I think about how the United States of America has prosecuted warfare, you know, since World War II, which was really a war of annihilation of the enemy, to bring the enemy to his knees. And, you know, that's what Clausewitz talked about. War is about the imposition of your will on another. We keep fighting half-measure warfare. In Korea, we fought half-measure warfare. Now we got a DMZ. How long have we been there? We did the same in Vietnam, and look what has happened. You know, we didn't fully end the mission in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and we had to come back some years later when I was a lieutenant colonel and try to finish that out. But still, we didn't finish it out in Iraq, and I'm concerned about us not finishing out in Afghanistan, because we're going to pack up and leave because that's what we've promised politically. You know. Are we just losing our will and desire to identify who the enemy is, and as you just said, confront them and defeat them, and we keep providing them the hope by these half measures that we're taking? Look at Libya.
Yeah. Well, one thing that is operating here, Alan, and I've really been praying that this particular debate would translate into an opportunity to illuminate the problem. And I've talked about it with you. I've talked about it with Steve and others. Identifying, as you say, the enemy. We have the enemy inside our wire, exercising influence on our government. They did it under Clinton to some extent. They did it under Bush. They're doing it big time under Obama. And that is contributing to this idea that, on the one hand, we should just use half measures to kind of bait and switch the American people into allowing us to get into another escapade to help Who? The Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
At best, at worst, Al-Qaeda. And secondly, we're actually failing to think carefully about what it's going to take to defeat this enemy. And that is, I think, absolutely unacceptable. And I believe that the American people are sick to the teeth of it, and that's part of why they don't want any part of getting into this war.
You're absolutely right, and the American people deserve better. Frank, I got about a minute left. What is your biggest concern, because I keep coming back to this, as far as the unintended consequence? If the president decides, I don't think he's going to get the vote in the House of Representatives, but if the president still decides that he's going to launch a military strike, what do you think is the biggest unintended consequence?
My biggest concern, as you know better than just about anybody, is we've hollowed out the military at a time of great and growing dangers around the world. We have a situation that could well precipitate a conflict between the United States and Russia in the Eastern Mediterranean right now. We are unprepared for that, and we are allowing our forces to be put at the disposal of the United Nations, or at least the international community, in a way that I think is detrimental to our sovereignty and our national security interests. You're
absolutely right. Frank Gaffney, President of Center for Security Policy, dear friend, colleague, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Alan. Thank you.
It was John F. Kennedy who said the absence of war is not peace. And we need to stop and think, is the world more Machiavellian than anything else? I believe it is. There's always someone out there looking for you to be weak at the moment when they're looking to be strong. This is Alan West, guest hosting the Steve Maltzberg Show. We're going to take a break, and when we come back from the break, we're going to talk to the 34th Commandant of the United States Marine Corps, General James Conway, to talk about our foreign dependency on oil and also get his perspective, having been the Commandant. What does he see as far as our military options? So thanks a lot. Stay on the lines for the calls, 1-855-777-9660. Alan West, we'll see you on the backside of the break.